All right, so I apologize for having to cancel class. I've been without Wi-Fi for now a week, and hopefully we're getting some progress as far as getting my internet back and up and running. Well, so it's less than ideal, so I'm happy to stay late after class on Monday, but this is Workshop 3, Introduction to AdTech. As we touched on in my first lecture, I've spent most of my career in AdTech, and here's a quick overview of what we'll cover in this brief deck. Talk about the ad tech ecosystem, all the moving parts that go into surfacing a display ad. And I want to be very deliberate here that when we're talking about ad tech in this context, I'm explicitly talking about display advertising. Ad tech is an all-encompassing term for a very, very large industry. Here I'm talking about display advertising, where most of the money in ad spend goes. You have other subunits of ad tech, things like social advertising, influencer marketing, things of that nature. We are very much focused on talking about the largest subset of the ad tech industry being display advertising. We're going to briefly cover AdExchanges, what they are and the role they play in surfacing ads to an end user. We're exploring a concept called the sales funnel as well, and how that relates to prospecting and retargeting. DMAs, we'll touch loosely on this. It's not super relevant, but it is something that is important to be cognizant of if you're going to be in the advertising industry or even any type of consumer research or consumer insights industry. And then we're going to dive into our data set, a data-driven approach to creative optimization, where I have generated actual data from an ad exchange where we can build a productized tool for media planners to optimize campaigns and make strategic decisions. So this is an intentionally noisy slide. This is a famous example of the complexity of the advertising industry. It's called the ad or the display lumiscape. You don't need to know all the details in here. I have pretty much spent most of my career in the measurement space as well as the DMP and aggregator space. I'll hopefully be teaching a class on the ad tech industry and what all this means, all the players and all that good stuff, but that's outside the scope of this class. That's a class all on its own. What's really important here is to understand that going from this side of the lumiscape, where it says marketer here in the green, marketers are people who have advertising budgets and want to buy consumer attention, which is what we see over here on the right side of the ad lumiscape. We have the publishers on this end who develop content that consumers in turn consume. Those publishers, in order to monetize themselves, have to sell ads to continue putting out content, assuming they're not doing something behind a paywall or some type of freemium model. But typically, advertising is how the internet has paid for itself. No one owns the internet. And ads are how it remains free. So how do we get from the marketer to the publisher and then into the end consumer and be able to buy attention? Well, that's what all of this noise here in the middle is. It's basically all the players, all the technology that go into servicing ads to an end consumer. This is an older version of the ad lumiscape. I don't think they've updated it in probably 5 years. There's been a lot of consolidation within the advertising industry, and so a lot of these folks are either have been acquired or gone bankrupt or have merged with other companies. But more or less, this still remains the same. So to simplify this, we're going to talk about ad exchanges. And this is a visual representation of what happens every time a web page renders on the internet and an ad surfaces in one of those unique ad spots or placement IDs. So if looking at this image here that's up for auction, we have an auctioneer that says RTB. That stands for real-time bidding, which is something we touched on in session 1, where advertising has gotten much more intelligent and data-driven, and it's become a technical discipline as a result of real-time bidding. But effectively, what ends up happening, an ad exchange facilitates an auction between people who want to buy attention and publishers that have available real estate to sell. That real estate are ad spots or placements within a web page. And so here we have visual representation of a web page. So you've got a couple different placements up here at the top that are smaller. You got some big, larger placements here on the side. These cost more money because they're more, they grab a consumer's attention more. But let's focus on the one that's highlighted blue, the ad spot here. The ad spot is every section of a web page that surfaces an ad has the ability to auction off that spot. And you have marketers who either work directly for an advertiser as an employee, or agencies and vendors who are spending on behalf of a company, who are then algorithmically bidding on the right to surface their creative and advertisements within that ad spot. This happens trillions of times a day. Think of how many websites there are in the world, and then think of how many times those web pages render. Well, every time a web page renders, this auction is being facilitated on the back end. Now, moving over to the right, the ad exchange brings together, it operates exactly how an old school stock exchange operates. Over here on the right, we have advertisers and marketers who want to buy these ad spots and surface on that attention and be able to surface their ads to consumers. Now, what you're seeing is all these different advertisers have different dollar values on top of them. These are what's called their bids. That's where the term real-time bidding comes into place. So the winner of this auction here is this person here in a tie bidding $2.75 CPM. Some of you may not know what CPM stands for, but CPM is an acronym that stands for cost per mile. This is advertising jargon. All it means is cost per 1,000 impressions. That's all you need to think of it as. So $2.75 gets you 1,000 impressions. So effectively, what ends up happening is as this page renders, an auction triggers in the back end for all of these available ad placements. The highest bidder then wins the right to show their creative on that side. Well, a little bit more is happening here. Each one of these advertisers has data about brand affinity. What type of target demographic are they going after? What type of mobile device? What type of devices are they going after? What types of consumers are they going after? And so that's where your cookie data that we talked about in session 4 comes into play. As this ad is rendering, the web page makes a call back to the ad exchange and says, hey, we have a cookie or a person who is rendering a page. Here is the information from the cookie log. And what these advertisers do is they take that metadata from the cookie log, plug it into an algorithm, and determine how much they want to bid and how relevant, based on their goals, that incoming cookies is to their for their end needs. And so this is where you start getting into targeting, retargeting, and building out customer profiles. So this is a really simple way of thinking about this completely noisy ecosystem. So that's what's happening every time a web page renders on the internet. And so what I've done is I've pulled data out of an ad exchange, and we're going to be working with a live campaign, or a real campaign, and you'll be able to see how much data and what types of data are generated by a campaign. But before we do that, let's explore a concept called the sales funnel. A useful way of thinking of a sales funnel is think of it as a sieve. You have all these bids that you want to try and buy up here. These are your total ad impressions, number of people and web traffic within a web page. Well, let's say you bid on 1,000 impressions up here. Well, only a few are going to click. That's why this funnel gets narrower, because only a few click here. And then of those people who click, only a few actually go to the web page or your landing page, which is typically like a sign-up form. So download a free ebook, register for a free webinar, or even if you want to get more aggressively, make a purchase. Instagram is notorious for this, where they kind of target impulse buyers, where you'll surface an ad on your feed, you tap it, and it takes you straight to a place where you can add to cart immediately, and then you can opt and close the screen, and then you'll be retargeted by the Instagram algorithm. And then on-page conversions is the final step. This is where an action happens or does not happen. You either make a purchase or sign up, or you don't. And so that's where this idea of the sales funnel comes in. It's a really powerful concept, particularly within the sales, marketing, and advertising worlds, but it really gives you a way that you can create a predictive model for how many ad impressions do you need to buy to get an X number of conversions and dollar revenue. And then this gives you you can back into, using that same model, you can back into a kind of like what's called a CPA, cost per acquisition. So for every new transaction you're driving through your ad campaign, how much does it cost when you start looking at it through a sales funnel? And then once you have a cost per acquisition, you can build another type of financial model called return on ad spend, where you're going to want to see a multiplier for every dollar you spend on an ad budget. You want to see a higher percentage return, so something like a 2,000% return for every dollar you spend on advertising. That's an ideal situation. It varies depending on the industry, but also the price of what you're selling. So this is a loose model that's incredibly useful. So this up here, where you're just kind of putting as many impressions as possible in here, is something called prospecting. What happens down here in the middle of the funnel is retargeting. So let's say of those 1,000 impressions you bought, 200 people clicked and they visited the landing page. Okay, well, let's say of those 200 people who clicked and then actually spent time on the landing page, only 100 actually didn't immediately close the page, and they actually did explore a little bit. So you've got, out of the 1,000 impressions, you now have only 100 folks who are spending time here. Now what you can do is you can siphon these two cohorts, folks who clicked and people who spent longer than 30 seconds on a landing page, and then you can put them into a new cohort where you can retarget them. If you've ever added something to your cart and then seen ads on other websites, that's because you are being retargeted based on actions you took on a web page. This is part of why privacy is such a big ethical discussion within the advertising industry. How much data we're giving up is a question consumers really need to ask themselves. And so this is an idea that you'll see in the display advertising as well as the social media advertising space. Some examples of landing pages. Google Cloud Platform. We've all seen things like this. Start a 60-day free trial. Here are all the things that you're going to get on your free trial. This is what's called a value proposition. And then this is kind of like a TLDR, too long didn't read, of the value proposition. And then a call to action. Try it for free. Well, Google is spending a certain number of dollars to drive as many people to this page as possible. And that is what we see up here in ad impressions. Well, of those people who were surfaced the ad, how many clicked and actually spent time on the landing page? Now we're here on the sales funnel. Now, of the people who spent time on the landing page, how many converted into a free trial? Those are the folks who click this try it for free button and sign up for a 60-day free trial. And what Google can do is build a financial model to see, okay, how much do we need to spend and how do we optimize our landing pages and our creatives to maximize the efficiency of our sales funnel? Because then you can start doing forecasting. You can use that as data to go ask for additional ad budget. Here's another example of a social media management platform called the Hootsuite. This is a much more streamlined, consumer-centric landing page. The best way to manage social, trusted by more than 18 million users worldwide. That's kind of like building their credibility. Enter your email address. That's the call to action. Try Hootsuite for free for 30 days, no risk, cancel anytime. And so Hootsuite is doing the exact same thing. Going back to our sales funnel, how many ad impressions they need to buy before, and how many clicks will drive folks to the landing page. And of those folks on the landing page, how many people actually convert and sign up for a 30-day free trial? So this is something that's a really valuable model We'll actually talk about DMAs in another class. It's not super relevant for this data set tonight, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to build a tool that enables advertisers and media planners in specific to look at their portfolio of ad spend and make sure that we're hitting our campaign target goals.